Now, the one thing I will say is you look over all of the shows that I've created and developed or produced, you'll see something something in common, which is they're all just a little bit different. They're all just a little bit unique or special that makes them stand out from everything else. And this is something else I preach. I'm a big follower of a guy named Seth Godin. If you don't know who he is, read his blog. He's one of the top 10 business bloggers on the web. And get his book. One of his first, most successful book was called Purple Cow. And the story of the Purple Cow is he was driving through the English countryside with his kids. And one of his kids saw a cow and was like, "Look, Dad, a cow." And then about 2 miles later, it was just nothing but hundreds of cows, and the kids were bored in the back seat. And he thought, what if there were a purple cow in the midst of this? They wouldn't be able to take their eyes off that cow as they drove by, right? They'd be staring at it. "Daddy, what's that? Daddy, stop the car so we can get out and go look at what that little dot of purple is amongst the sea of white." And he translated that to a marketing strategy. And then and I've actually even taken it further by translating it into a product development strategy. Now, I know you're like, product development? What the hell is Ken talking about? Remember, I talked about everything that you're doing. You're running your own business. I got news for you. Whether you like it or not, your play, your musical, your one-person show, your poem, your novel, your screenplay is a product. And your job is to sell the product. It doesn't sound very artsy, does it? Well, the moment you start looking at it as a product, the better success you will have in selling it. It's that simple. This is a big old business, the entertainment industry. It's a big one. There's a lot of money at stake. And I'm not saying that product you have to follow just commercial guidelines. Hamilton's a product. Hamilton's a product that was sold and developed unbelievably well and very, very purple, right? To get back to that story, I'm a big believer in developing things that are unique. Why? The entertainment industry is one of the most cluttered industries on the planet. Not only in its most public form, not only are they like Broadway, New York City is the most cluttered place for live entertainment. You have so many options now more than ever before. So there are about to be 41 Broadway theaters. How many off-Broadway theaters? How many off-Broadway theaters? How many stand-up comedy venues? How many live music venues? Now, we poll the tourists in Times Square and ask them what they'd like to do when they're here in New York City. You know what some of them say? Sit on the steps in Times Square. Guess how much that costs them? Nothing. People watching in Times Square. You didn't want to people watch in the late 70s, early 80s. Let me tell you something. It's a little bit different now. There's it's unbelievable how cluttered and how many options there are. Never mind the let's, just stay home and watch Netflix and chill, right? That's a whole other thing. Watch things on your phone, whatever. So there's so much clutter in there. How do you get your show to stand out? How do you get an audience member to go, I want to see that thing? Well, old school business will tell you advertise, advertise, advertise. Take a full-page ad in the New York Times 3 times in a row. Do $1 million direct mail or $1 million-piece direct mail. Take television commercials. And yes, there is a certain amount of advertising that needs to happen with every big industry and with even small shows. I did a consult yesterday with a guy producing a show for 5 weeks. He was like, how do I get some butts in seats? I said, well, you have to do some advertising. You have to market. The question is what does that person do with a very limited budget? And that's where you got to get creative, right? But wouldn't it be easier and take some of the stress off of you if your product itself was just a little purple? If it was just a little special so that it did the advertising itself? So if you look at all my shows, there's something about them that make them a little different or exceptional so they advertise themselves. Number one reason why people buy tickets to a show? Anyone know? Take a guess. Word of mouth. Word of mouth. That's it. It's not full-page ads in the New York Times. And this goes back 50, 60, 100 years. It's always word of mouth. Always. No matter how many forms of advertising come up every day that people are trying to sell you, the number one thing is word of mouth. I'm actually a big believer that all that advertising does is support word of mouth. You hear from a friend, oh, I just saw Hamilton. It's amazing. Oh my God, that's great. When you hear that, you don't buy tickets right away, right? You're like, oh my God, Hamilton's amazing. Oh my God, I'm gonna buy tickets right now. I'm gonna stop whatever I'm doing, having dinner, and buy tickets. Well, Hamilton, maybe you try. But other shows, you don't do that. Or someone recommends a book or a gym or a restaurant. You don't, what if they do it while you're eating? You don't leave and go to the other restaurant. No, you just file it away in your word of mouth and your personal recommendation files. And then what happens, you see a bus ad with Hamilton on the side, and you're like, oh, Hamilton, I've heard that's amazing. I've heard that's great. I really should buy tickets. You don't do it then either. You know, the old school advertising, 5 to 8 impressions before you make a purchase. It's all fueled and started by word of mouth primarily.